Hey folks, so the two most common tunings for old-time banjo, be it claw hammer or two-finger or even old-timey three-finger picking, those tunings are the standard G tuning and then the double C tuning. And of course you can capo up either of those tunings, you can capo either one up too so that the G tuning becomes an A tuning and the double C tuning becomes a double D tuning. So you can cover a lot of keys there. Now, most people, I think, learn the standard G tuning first, but not all. Some people learn the double C tuning first. But anyway, let's say you start out with the standard G tuning and then somebody wants to teach you the double C tuning and playing some tunes in there. And it's like a whole nother universe. You've got to learn different chords, chord shapes. Your basic chords are different chords, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, it's a different key, so that's going to happen. But I think a lot of people get tripped up in trying to memorize new chords in new tunings. In particular, the double C is the first challenge on that. So what I want to do here today is show you a way to understand chords in the double C tuning without having to resort to, say, rote memorization per se. And we can do that by using the standard G tuning as our yardstick, as our reference point. And we'll look at that, we'll look at chords in that tuning, and then ask the question, if we're in double C tuning, how would we modify those chord forms to make the chords we want to make? So what we'll look at is the three basic major chords, the 1, 4, 5 chords as they're known, which would be C, F, and G. We'll take a quick look at how you create what would be the relative minor. That would be an A minor. And then I'll show you how you can form a B flat chord, which is useful in playing modal tunes. Okay, well, my banjo is in the double C tuning. From 5th string down to 1st string, I've got a high G, the 4th string's a C, the 3rd string's a G, the 2nd string's a C, and then of course, the 1st string's a D. And this is not an open tuning like the standard G tuning. You have to fret strings in order to form regular chords. Well, let's start by thinking about, we want to form the C chord and then the F chord and the G chord. Those are the 1, 4, and 5 chords in the double C tuning. And if you're not familiar with that 1, 4, 5 terminology, I won't go deep into it. It's a numbering system for chords. So if the first note of the scale is C, as in the key of C, then that note is assigned a 1. And so the C chord is the 1 chord. The F chord, the root of that is F. That's the 4th note of the scale, so that's a 4 chord. And the G chord, the root of that is the note G, and G is the 5th note of the C major scale. So 1, 4, and 5, that's how we get at that. Now, let's take a step back and imagine that we're in the standard G tuning. Again, my banjo's not tuned to that, but if it were tuned to that, it would be 5th string G, 4th string D, 3rd string G, 2nd string B, and then 1st string is still D. And I assume you're familiar with the standard G tuning. Let's start by looking at how we would make the C chord in the standard G tuning. And let's just lay our fingers on the banjo. And that's a 3-finger chord. Hopefully you're familiar with it, but I'll walk you through it. So you put your pointer finger on the 2nd string at the 1st fret. Then you put your middle finger on the 4th string at the 2nd fret. And then we're going to put our ring finger on the 1st string at the 2nd fret. So 3 fingers are down. The 3rd string or the G string is still open. Of course, I was strong. I'm in double C tuning. That sounds awful. So that's not a C chord, obviously. But let's think through how we can change that into a C chord for the double C tuning. So take a look at this. Let's start with our pointer finger. We've tuned that string from a B up to a C, so there's no need to have our finger down on that string. We want that as a C note, so we can get rid of that fretting finger right there. Also, for double C, we've tuned the 4th string down to a C, taking it from a D down to C once we went from the G tuning to double C. So we don't need that finger there either. And the only fretted note we're left with is the 2nd fret of the 1st string. And I'm going to swap out my fingers as we would do for the double C tuning. I generally would use my pointer finger there, and lo and behold, I have a C chord. So let's run through that real quickly again. If I laid down my C chord form for for standard G tuning, it'd be a 3-finger chord. And if I want to reason through that, I don't need my finger on the 2nd string because that's a C note, and I don't need my finger on the 4th string because that's a C note. So all I'm left with is 2nd fret of the 1st string, and that's my C chord in the double C tuning. Let's apply that to finding the F chord in the double C tuning. And we start by thinking about what would be the chord form in standard C. What would be the chord form in standard G? And that's going to be a 4-finger chord. A lot of people hate that chord, but there it is. Let's think through that. Once again, if we were in standard G tuning, put your pointer finger down on the 2nd string 1st fret, and then we would lay our middle finger down on the 3rd string 2nd fret. Then we would lay our ring finger down on the 4th string 3rd fret. So we've got this kind of slant going here. And then we'd put our pinky on the 1st string 3rd fret. And that would be our full F chord. And of course, that's not a chord anymore because I'm in the double C tuning. So what do we need to do to modify that to adapt to the double C tuning? Well, just like before, we've raised the 2nd string up to a C, so we don't need that finger down. Lift that finger up, so that can be an open string. We've dropped the 4th string, as we noted before, down to C, so we don't need that finger down. So we're left with 2 fingers. We're holding down the 3rd string at the 2nd fret and the 1st string at the 3rd fret. And I can change that around, so I'm using my pointer and my ring finger, and there's my F chord. Once again, we started with the standard G tuning as our reference point, laid down the F chord as if we were in this standard G tuning, and then figured out what fingers we still needed to make that chord in double C. So now we have C, the 1 chord, and F, the 4 chord. So the 5 chord in double C, or in the key of C, I should say, is a G chord. Let's go back to standard G tuning. Well, that would be, as I say, a free chord. We don't have to fret anything. It's an open chord. So what do we need to do? Once again, we've dropped the 4th string down to a C, so we need to bring that back up to a D to get into a D chord. So we're going to have to fret that string at the 2nd fret. So 4th string 2nd fret. You can use your pointer on that. And it's still not quite there. And the reason is we've raised our 2nd string from a B to a C. So our 3rd string's good. That's still a G. Our 1st string's good. That's still a D. But that 2nd string is now a C note. Rats. So what are we going to do? We can't get a B note unless we put our pinky way down here on the 3rd string at the 4th fret. That would give us a B, but then that wipes out our G note. Since the 4th string is a C and the 2nd string is a C, just parallel what you're doing on the 4th string and lay a finger down. In this case, I'm using my middle finger. Lay the middle finger down on the 2nd string at the 2nd fret. And that gives us our G chord, or in reality, it's a partial G chord, because if you look at the notes, all we have here are a D, a G, a D, and a D. So we got 3 Ds and a G, and then we add in the 5th string, got another G. So it's just a 2-note chord. It's not a regular 3-note chord because we lost the B note. So we don't have a full chord here. We have a partial chord. It's kind of like a power chord in guitar playing. But that's what we generally use for the G chord. So C, F, G. And by the way, for the G chord, you can use your pointer finger and middle finger, or depending upon the situation, you can use your middle finger and ring finger to form that chord. So there's your basic 3 basic major chords for playing in the key of C in the double C tuning. A whole lot of songs just use those 3 chords. Now another useful chord is your relative minor chord. If we are in standard G tuning, our relative minor in the key of G is the E minor. In the key of C in the double C tuning, or whatever C tuning that we're in, as long as we're playing in the key of C, Our relative minor would be an A minor. Again, I won't go into the theory behind that. We'll just accept that as that's what it is. So the question is, how do we figure out the A minor chord? Let's refer back to the standard G tuning. The A minor chord is another 4-finger chord. We're going to put our pointer finger down on the 2nd string 1st fret. We're going to put our middle finger down on the 4th string 2nd fret. So it's almost like forming a C chord. Now we're going to put our ring finger down on the 3rd string 2nd fret, getting a little crowded there. And note that we're fretting the 4th string at the 2nd fret, so we need to fret the 1st string at the 2nd fret with our pinky. And that would be our A minor chord. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing here, but once again, pointer finger on the 2nd string 1st fret, and then we're going to fret strings 4, 3, and 1 at the 2nd fret. Think of it this way. If we barred at the 2nd fret in the standard G tuning, that would be our A chord. But to turn that into A minor, we have to flatten the note on the 2nd string. We'll bring that down to a C, and it would look like that. Okay. Now, having laid that down, and that, if you've got a really narrow neck, that's a lot to cram in there, because 3 fingers are at the 2nd fret. Let's think through this again. Now that we're in double C tuning, what do we need left? Well, once again, we've changed the 2nd string to C so we can pick up our pointer finger, get rid of that, and we've dropped our 4th string to a C. So get rid of that, and what we're left with is a finger on the 1st string and a finger on the 3rd string at the 2nd fret. And there's our A minor chord. Now, I would typically switch that around, probably so that I'm using my pointer and middle finger to play that chord, but you can use different fingers to do that depending upon where you're coming from. But that's our A minor chord. So C, A minor. Alrighty. And by the way, I'll give you an easy one here if you don't already know this. There's our C chord. We already worked that out. To change that to a C minor, we won't go back to the standard G for a second, although we could. Sorry. To change that to C minor, just move your pointer finger down to the 1st fret of the 1st string. And you've got a C minor. Lastly, it's useful to know the B flat chord in the double C tuning. If we were in standard G tuning and playing modal tunes, something like Shady Grove, Frosty Morning, Cluckled Hen, something like that, the chords would involve, if we're playing in key of G, a G and then an F chord. It's a 7th chord, if you will. Well, if we're in the double C tuning, and that 7th chord would then be a B flat. It's 2 half steps down from C. Again, we don't want to get lost in theory. The question is, how do we form that chord? Where do we find it? Well, let me show you this. Let's think in terms of the bar C chord in the standard G tuning. And that would be at the 5th fret. We would lay our finger across all 4 strings to get the C chord. Open is a G, barring at the 5th fret gives us C. But we're in double C tuning. Once again, we don't need the 4th string fretted because that's a C already, so we can just bar the first 3 strings. And then remember, we've tuned the 2nd string up, so really I don't want to bar that at the 5th fret, I want to fret that at the 4th fret. So what I need to do here is pick up my finger, put your pointer finger on the 2nd string, 4th fret, then put your middle finger on the 3rd string, 5th fret, and mimic that on the 1st string, 5th fret, 1st string with your ring finger. So now I've got this little triad here. And that's a C chord. So we've got this C chord, and we've got that C chord. And all this triad is a modification of the bar chord that you know from the standard G tuning. We have to fret the 2nd string at the 4th fret rather than at the 5th fret. So we get this triad C chord. Now we've got 2 C chords to work with, here and here. But to get our B flat chord, that 7th chord for playing modal tunes, just shift this whole triad form down 2 frets. Now we're fretting 2nd string, 2nd fret, 3rd string, 3rd fret and 1st string 3rd fret. And focused on, don't worry about the 4th string here so much. And that's our B flat chord. So now I have something like this. Or that B flat chord is very useful in modal tunes, minor tunes, so on and so forth. All right, the whole point of this is when you learn a new tuning, something like double C, you already know the standard G tuning. Think of the standard G tuning as your reference point, your yardstick. Take the chord forms you know in that tuning and then figure out how you have to modify them when you go into the new tuning. That's what I wanted to show you. Hopefully that proved useful. Work through this yourself and try this with other tunings. All right, have fun, keep on picking.